John, reinvention isn't just about finding a new job. It's a profound shift in identity. What do you think is the biggest internal transformation someone must go through successfully reinvent their careers?
Good question. In today's career marketplace, the number one thing I think people need to accomplish as a mind shift, a mindset shift, is to go from this sense of being an employee who is pleading for a job to a consultant who is offering a valuable service. Too often, we are intimidated by the employer, the recruiter, the prospect of having a job interview where we're going to be asked all sorts of really intimidating questions. And the system is designed to keep us down, right? We are cogs in the wheel. We are commodities to be discarded when we no longer are useful, or whether we get annoying, or whether we challenge authority. They just will toss us. And we need to become much stronger, smarter, resilient, and believe in ourselves a lot more, and understand how to communicate the value that we offer so that we can be more successful and more consistent and have longer and better careers.
You're raising a very good point when it comes to that we were, I don't know if it were societal expectations or conditioning that we would have to find a job and get a job and all of that. And I get it. I mean, not everyone can be an entrepreneur, not everyone can be a consultant, but one flaw that I've seen in the, say, job market is now all the power is in the company. You almost have to beg for a job. I've seen people, whether on my Facebook or LinkedIn, say, "Hey, I've applied to 100 plus companies. I've gone through so many interviews." It's almost like it should be like equal part. Like, hey, I'm providing you a great service, and you are paying me, so we're both winning. But it feels nowadays that it's almost like, please, please, just give me a job. I'll take anything. And I think a lot of that comes from a lot of people have a lot of dissatisfaction coming from that, because even once after they spend 6, 8, 9 months finding a job or looking for a job, and they find one, and then they realize that they're not even happy, but just they have to do it to pay their bills, or they have to do it because that's the only way that society accepts them. Having that shift of mindset of, hey, I don't have, let me play my own game, which is scary, because when you play your own game, you have no blueprint. You know that if you apply enough times and you go to enough interview, eventually you'll land a job. But when you take things on your own hands, it's the unknown, it's the uncertain. How can people make peace with the fear of jumping into the unknown and playing their own game, rather than the games that have been around for centuries, I guess?
So I think it's important to understand that this is not an either or. This is not either it's your way or the highway, or my way or the highway. This is not about being arrogant. This is not about being confrontational. This is really about understanding yourself. So the old days, the paradigm of the three acts of a career were: you get a good education. That education entitles you to get to work, to get a job. You're going to be in that job most of your career. You're going to have maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 jobs over the course of your career. And then, because you've worked for 40 years, you're entitled to retire. Well, that paradigm doesn't work anymore. That paradigm hasn't been here for a long time. The new paradigm, I would suggest, is this. First of all, a good education, education is lifelong. You never stop learning. Things are changing too much. The status quo is no longer acceptable. You can no longer get a diploma or a degree and say, okay, I'm going to dine out on that diploma or that degree for the rest of my career, right? You have to continually be moving and be learning. So let's get that out of the way. So I would suggest that the first act of your career is not to get a good education, get a job. The first act of your career is to know yourself, is self-reflection and self-knowledge. Because if you jump into your career without really knowing what you're good at or what you love to do or how you're being received in the marketplace, you're going to have a hard time because it's going to buffet you. It's going to really upset you all the way down the line. You've got to go into that market. You're talking about parity, achieving parity with the employer. One way to achieve that parity is to have a sense of what you're good at. Because if you know what you're good at doing, you're going to start concentrating on finding work in those areas. And you're going to develop your skill set around what you're already good at. So you're just building strength for yourself. It's like going to the gym. So that self-knowledge gets you going. And then the thing that is really tough for a lot of people is that the second stage is not just kind of working steady state for 40 years. You've got to keep growing and giving back. So there's this concept of generativity that the psychologist Erik Erikson invented. And the idea behind generativity, no surprise, is that you're constantly generating value. And you want to look for opportunities in your life and in your career to figure out where you can generate the most value. So some people would call this a service-oriented mindset. But if you're in a job that you hate, and maybe you got there for the wrong reasons, look for the opportunity to be of service. That may be to the coworker sitting next to you. It may be to some principle or some goal or some part of the company mission. It may be towards a particular manager. Maybe you want to shift to working for that manager because you like the way they roll. You like their ideas, you like their manner, their personality, their whole way about them. But think about generating value in some way, shape, or form. You'll feel better about yourself in the long term, right, and the short term, because you know that you're making at least a little bit of difference. And then the third act of the career is no longer retirement, because who can afford to retire? We're living longer. We want to stay engaged with our lives and our careers. Retirement is about kind of crawling into a hole and with other people who are old and just kind of waiting to die. No, you want to be active and engaged and take all the value that you have earned and learned from all of your years at work and give it back. So giving back is that third act, right? Be of service, pay it forward, prepare the next generation with all the wisdom that you've learned to take over the reins.
That was a great breakdown. But one thing that it got stuck in my mind was you said that we needed to know ourselves. And that is something that for a lot of people is just hard. It was hard for me for a long time to discover what really I was good at, or what the those almost like hidden talents that we didn't know we even had until we start exploring the different things. And I think in my mind, based on how we are raised, based either we have professional parents, one is a doctor, one is a lawyer, or they're engineers, or they're teachers or something, we're almost we're being conditioned to follow a specific path. And I think one of the hardest part of career reinvention, and we see this a lot nowadays, because as you say, years ago, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, your the idea was you be at one job, or maybe two, three jobs, but one industry for 40 years, and then you were done. You were doing the same thing over and over and over. Maybe you would just go from a entry level to a supervisor, manager, VP or something, right? And you climb that corporate ladder. But what we have seen a lot is people have a lot of dissatisfaction, because now there are a lot more opportunities for you to explore yourself, and to really exploit your talents. And I think that one of the biggest issues for people is that they make a decision at the age of 18. Hey, this is what I'm going to study in college, whether it's for engineer, doctor, law, business. anything. But then 5, 10, 15 years later, they think that they have to stick to that because that's the choice they made.
Right.
No one has to do that. And it's just letting go of those old narrative about who we are, because we feel that's what I chose, that's what I'm supposed to do until the day I retire.
Hmm.
How do you guide people to, through the process of rewriting their own story and getting
Right.
to know themselves?
Right. Well, first of all, what you're talking about is an outgrowth of this 40-year career span that we're used to thinking about, that has been going on since the beginning of the industrial era. And ironically, I think we need to start thinking about a longer career. We need to start thinking about a 60-year career, because that's much more realistic in terms of the amount of time that we're actually going to be working. But the 60-year career is not an industrial era career where you go to work in one company, you do the same job or something similar, and you're kind of sitting at that desk for 40 years. It's going to be a lot more varied. You're going to be going in and out of school. You're going to be learning new things. You're going to be taking breaks for family and caregiving. You're going to be taking breaks to find yourself, to have a sabbatical. You're going to be taking breaks between jobs. You're going to need to understand how to best take advantage of that. You're going to need to take care of your mind and your body and your soul over the course of those 60 years. So the whole concept of work and career needs to, it's starting, but it needs to continue to evolve into a much more holistic approach so that you are constantly, I was talking before about generativity, the idea of providing value. Well, one of the ways that you provide ever increasing and relevant value is to take these kinds of breaks, is to make these kinds of change ups in your career. So there's nothing wrong with starting off with one vision when you're 18, doing that for 5, 10, 15 years, but then listen to yourself. If you've learned everything that you need to learn, done everything you need to do in that career segment in service to the choice that you made, great. Maybe it's time to move on. If you're feeling itchy, if you're feeling bored, if you're getting into conflicts, if you're getting fired a lot, well, maybe the universe is sending you a message, which is you got to think about this differently. You've got to change it up. So maybe you want to go back to school. Maybe you want to take a trip for a month to some far off place to talk to new people, learn new things. Maybe you want to get into a much more concentrated focus with a group of people in a particular organization who are following a particular path, whether it is business oriented or athletics or spirituality or intellectual pursuits, whatever that might be. You need to change it up. So there's all sorts of stuff that we can do to help us figure these things out. And I think the most important element of this is feedback, is getting feedback from other people who know us, who are concerned about us, people that we've made strong connections with through work, through school, through family, through friendships, who can really give us the straight story and the constructive feedback that maybe we don't want to hear. We don't like to hear it because it's hard to hear, but we know that it's the feedback that we need to hear in order for us to grow, because nothing ever grows through inertia and steady state. It always grows through conflict and through stress and through pressure. That's how we grow, through challenge.
I agree with a lot of with your last statement, and I do feel every now and then, and I don't know if it's my perception, that for a lot of people, it's just hard, or for many people, it's hard to take that feedback. It goes against their, in their minds, against their self worth or their identity, and it's just hard to pivot. It's hard to even change
That's
careers. So
that's a limiting belief, right?
100
Right.
percent 100%, which ties up to another limiting belief I'm sure that you have heard a lot. And it seems like before we used to hear this, people in their 50s or 60s. Now we're going to hear more people in their 30s. They believe that it's too late for them to change something, or change careers or pursue something new.
Right.
It seems like we are so afraid of making the wrong choice that,
Hmm.
and we don't really call, we are so bad at having this time perception, because we can, I bet that there are many people out there that they're in their 30s, mid 30s, and they say, you know what, I would love to change careers, but I do feel it's too late. And then they stick on the same job for 5, 10 more years, and they look back in their mid 40s. God, I wish I would have done it, 10 years ago. We feel that every time it's too late, and then we let time pass, and then only in hindsight, only when we look back, we say, why didn't I make that change
Hmm.
back then?
Yeah.
But based on those beliefs or those limiting beliefs, how can people just overcome that initial pushback from, hey, don't try something new because it's already too late, and realize,
Hmm.
hey, I can save myself the pain that I'll
Hmm.
feel in 5, 10 years from now if I do the change now.
Yeah. It's a really difficult question, and it is so dependent on the willingness of the person to take the steps necessary. So there's the old psychiatrist and the light bulb joke. Uh, how many psychiatrists does it take to change a light bulb? And the answer is only one, but the light bulb really has to want to change. And right, so that's the essence of it. And you're asking me this question. Well, how can we encourage people to take the steps to change? You know, at some point, you've got to decide in your life that you're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And when you're at that bottom, it's time to change things up. And for many people, they have to get to that bottom. They have to hit that bottom. There's the other story, since we're in the storytelling portion of the interview, where I'm sure you know this one about the priest and the church and the flood. So there's a priest in his church, and there's a big flood, and it's just going to be sweeping through. Everyone is evacuating, but the priest says, "No, I'm not going to evacuate. I have faith in God. God will protect me." So the flood is really rising. It's now over the steps to the church. It's kind of sloshing into the church, and he hears this horn. He wades out into the church, and there's a sheriff in a boat, in a motorboat. He says, "Come on, Father, come on, I'm going to save you." He goes, "No, I have faith in God. God will protect me." Well, the waters are rising even more. He's got to climb up into the attic and go onto the roof, and the waters are really all the way up to the roof, and he sees this helicopter come over, and there's this the Marine in the helicopter leans out and he says, "Hey, Father, here, I'm going to lower a line. I'm going to rescue you. You're going to pull you up." He says, "No, go away. I have faith. God will protect me." Well, the water goes up and up and up over the top of the roof, and he goes into the water, and the water swirls around, and he drowns. So he goes up to heaven, and he's really pissed. He is really pissed because God didn't protect him, right? So marches into the pearly gates, and he says, and God comes and welcomes him in, and he says, I'm really disappointed in you. You didn't protect me. You let me die." And God says, "What do you mean? I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. What do you want?"
That, uh, John, that is, I needed, I heard the story many, many years ago, and I needed that
Right.
reminder. And I needed that reminder. And many people probably have heard the story. I need that reminder as well. One of the things that I've tried to pay more attention to is those signs. If we trying to control how the outcome is going to be, or what signs we should be looking for, we're going to miss all of the signs, all of the indications that, hey, this is your moment to take action, only because we want to do it our way. And our way is almost never going to work. You need to understand and let off the control that you need to have. Because I think that part of the uncertainty brings that obsession that we have of gripping harder to something,
Right.
to to a belief. And I love how you brought this story, even though it wasn't even how we got to this point. But when it comes to revenge, when it comes to really take a leap of faith, you will have signs along the way, but you
Yeah.
have to have open eyes to see it and to
Right.
recognize them.
Right.
Just like the priest, hey, with the first warning, it should have been enough. Yeah, hey, we're, I'm protecting you by showing you a warning. Okay, you didn't. Here's a boat here. But I think the same thing happens in our life when we need a radical change. We start getting these pieces of suffering until something tragic happens in our life,
Yeah.
maybe death of a loved one, maybe we
Well,
lose our job, something, and that shakes us up enough to make us change.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
sometimes I wonder, yeah, yeah,
Well, you were talking about the outcome, being focused on the outcome, right? And I think that in the context of that story, and I haven't thought about the story in this way before, but in a way, the priest in the story is uh, is focused on his ego, right? His ego is, I'm important, I'm a priest, God is going to protect me the way I think I should be protected. I'm going to have a miracle. Uh, but the opportunity was really for the priest, how do I serve my community? How do I serve my congregation? Am I serving my congregation by not being rescued and staying here in the church and then dying? Is that going to serve my community? No. I'm going to go into that boat so I can do the job that I have signed up for, right? So, to your point about understanding what the universe is extending to us, if you look at your life every day and think, man, I hate my job. I dread going to work. I hate these people, but I'm stuck. Well, no, you've got many, many more choices than that. You have choices that you can exercise at work about your attitude towards the job, the people that you work with, the opportunity that may be there that you're not seeing because you're kind of blinded to hating what's been going on or fixating on a person at the work, whose personality you don't like, you don't mesh with, or you need to look at resources for how you could change the job, right? And if you say, well, I don't have time to change the job, I don't have time to look for another job. Well, what are you putting above? What are you making more important than your happiness? Well, I've got to watch my shows on TV, right? Or I've got to, drink my 2 bottles of beer, or whatever it is that you're putting ahead of what's really important to you. That's something you can look at. And this gets into something which might be more helpful and practical if we talk about, which is habit building and the idea of how do you change a mindset? Because our minds are infinitely malleable. One of the great neuroscience discoveries of the last 50 years is this idea of neuroplasticity. The idea almost that if we think it, we can become it, because the brain will lay down new neural pathways to help us build new ways of looking at the world. And we don't have to get into a whole neuroscience lesson here, but there's some really great research about this. And practically speaking, we can take small steps, because this is what it takes, small steps every day to change our habits and to change the way things can work out for us, to change our outcomes. And just small habits where we can achieve small successes can give us increased confidence around our ability to make changes. And once we have a little bit more confidence about our ability to make changes on a small level, well, we can stack those small achievements on top of one another, and in a relatively short amount of time can learn to make more impact, better choices, achieve greater successes.
to be honest with you, John, one of the things that have helped me in the last couple of years to make peace with a lot of things, to maybe take more risk, to have more agency, is having a better understanding of how our brain works. I'm kind of obsessed a little with neuroscience as well. Is okay, even for that person who just going to work, and then that person says, you know what, I don't have time to apply for a job. That is the regular part of their body just showing resistance because wants to stay in the familiar. Anything new comes at a cost of, hey, we don't know what is going to happen. Our brains are designed to keep us safe, not to help us thrive. So when we have a deeper understanding of that, we can put, I feel that it is hard to hold people accountable for things that they're oblivious to. And to me, I'm trying, and that's why I'm trying to just find ways to drop some nuggets of knowledge, or even wisdom, that if you get to understand yourself better, if you understand how your brain works, then you can trick yourself to overcome those barriers, those self-imposed barriers, that, hey, I need to, I can do this because, you know what, I have my beers, I have my show, I need to decompress. Yeah, your life could be much easier or better or happier if you do the things at the beginning. But also what you were mentioning about that having the growth mindset, and having that, how malleable our brains are. I think that we overestimate what we can do in a day, but we completely underestimate what we can accomplish in a year. We we feel that in a year is so far away, I won't be able to make it, because every single step seems so insignificantly small that if you compare day one to day two, okay, I didn't advance at all. Only when with enough distance, 6 months, a year, 2 years, you can look back and say, holy shit, look how far I've come, that I never saw it until I had enough distance. But again, reinvention requires resilience, and especially when facing rejection, when facing uncertainty. And I know that you have had your fair share of career changes and reinventions, and or just even adversity. What are some practical ways that you have uh, applied into your life to cultivate resilience in the face of setbacks?
The most important tool that I have discovered for this is to engage in a short daily journal. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book The Artist's Way, the writer Julia Cameron. This is the idea of morning pages. And she wrote
I
this
don't like
book.
them, by the way. I don't like them, by the
Okay.
way.
Well, it's interesting. There may be some limiting beliefs there that we should
Yeah.
talk about. But the idea of morning pages is that for writers, this was designed for writers who had writer's block. And staring at that blank page in the morning can be really devastating. And the idea of morning pages was write about everything except work, and do this completely spontaneously, stream of consciousness, whatever comes up. And I really rely on this, and I really encourage people to do this. Just write one single page in a small notebook every day about whatever is on your mind. Because what you're doing in that process is you are creating a dialogue and developing a relationship with your unconscious. There is a lot of wisdom locked up inside you, a lot of insight. And by just allowing the thoughts to just spill out of your mind onto the page, uncensored, you're never going to have to read it. You're never going to have to show it to anybody. Just whatever's coming out of your head, listen to what that is. You may be surprised by what you are telling yourself, what's kind of flowing from within you. And I guarantee you that if you do a page a day, pretty much without interruption for 30 to 40 days, you're going to start to see some changes. You're going to start to feel much more a sense of agency about yourself. You're going to feel a lot more energized about your ideas, about what's possible. You can use your journal to brainstorm ideas, to vent about problems, to complain, to celebrate, to renew ideas and cultivate relationships. All sorts of things that you can do in that short 15 minutes a day of sitting down and just writing.
It's
I would
funny.
encourage you to revisit this.
Yeah, I need to go back to it. The funny thing, I tried last year. I bought the book. I followed. I think my mistake were to one. Well, one of the limiting beliefs is, for me, it's harder to write. Whenever I'm in front of a page, I don't know what to write. It just, I'm blank. I'm more. I
So you can write,
I
I don't know what to write. I'm sitting here in front of this
yeah.
page. I'm supposed to do this thing. I don't know why I committed to do this, and I have nothing to say, absolutely nothing to say. So I'm just going to recite a poem. Mary had a little lamb. Da, da, da. You can write whatever you want, and I guarantee you that if you do that and you just push the words out, no matter what they are, and I encourage my clients to say this, I hate writing this journal. I hate John for suggesting that I do this journal. What does he know? Blah, 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 blah. Whatever it is that you're going to write, all of a sudden you're going to hear something unexpected.
No, true. I mean, I believe it. I think it happened a couple of times with me. A couple mistakes, no mistakes, things that I didn't know that it could have gone better. First of all, I had like
Well,
a
what's better? What does better look like?
no. So here's the thing. So when I was doing it, first of all, I had like a large notebook, and because of the book says write 3 pages, to me, I felt like, well, that is. Let me show you that the size
Yeah.
of the
So
notebook.
we'll compare notebooks. So
That's the size of
yeah,
my
no,
notebook. Yeah, yeah. See, I need something like that. I need something like
yeah,
that.
nice little Moleskine book, you know, A4, whatever this is. Yeah, that's all.
Y-
Just a page, just a
Well,
page in here. That's all you
well.
need.
So because I follow instruction. It's like 3 pages, and one thing I'm doing as soon as I wake up, I'm so sleepy. I'm writing down and stop because I got distracted with my own thought, and then I'm gone for 5 minutes, and oh crap, I need to keep writing. That process will take me 45 minutes to 50. It's like, man, it takes forever. And I could see, to me, it was all or nothing. Either do it this way or not at all. Instead of adapting, well, what if I buy a smaller notebook? What if I write
Right,
1 page instead of three?
right.
So I think that and that is something I've been trying to change about myself, that I need to follow everything to, you know, to a point. Now with this, now talking to you, it's like, okay, let me do it again. Let me
Yeah,
try it again. But now this time, hey, if I only have 1 page, great. If I have two or three, awesome.
yeah,
But not getting discouraged by the fact that it was taking me almost an hour to write 3 pages just because I would get distracted so easily
yeah,
because I was so sleepy as well. So
yeah. Well, uh, do it at a time of day where you're going to be awake, right? So maybe instead of doing it in the morning because you're tired, do it at the end of the day. Do it as a way of kind of relaxing at the end of the day before you go to sleep. You can do it where you set the intention. You start by setting the intention for the next day. What am I going to be doing tomorrow? Let me just kind of list out what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. How do I feel about that? Do I really want to be doing this tomorrow? What should I be looking for? I'm meeting with this person. How do I feel about that? I don't know. I'm kind of excited, or I'm kind of, you know, uh, uh, scared, or whatever that might be. Right. So whatever the process is, you've got to. I know you're talking about how you want to do it right, and follow the process. But at the end of the day, it's got to serve you. She doesn't care whether you do it or not,
yeah, well,
right?
yeah,
You've already bought the book, right?
fair, fair.
But I mean, not to be too flip about it, but you've got to make it work for you. And that's why I changed the process for people and said, no, you don't have to do 3 pages, right? Do something that's achievable.
Yeah, and I think, well, first of all, I have a couple of thoughts about it. One, your idea is brilliant of doing it at night for two reasons. I'm piggybacking something that another guest shared with me probably a couple of months ago. One of our practices is to write at night things that went well that day. We have a negativity
Yeah.
bias. We only focus on the things that we couldn't accomplish. We rarely give ourselves credit for even the small wins. But even by having on your journal, even as a part of the morning pages, but now let's say evening pages, you
Mm-hmm.
write the things that went well. Only focus on the things that you did. That you accomplished, because again, it's not a sprint; it's a
Right.
marathon.
But
And
once
but
again,
all
I think fine. The the goal here is to we're dialing it back here, bring it back. We're talking about how do you get going on this process, right? How do you get going on this process of opening up your mindset, of reinventing your career or whatever that might be, how do you get out of being stuck? How do you go beyond this inertia where you're just kind of repeating the same thing over and over again? So again, it's about making it useful, making it easy. It doesn't have to be about, oh, I'm going to do it at night. So I'm going to every night it's going to be about what I did that day that is good, right? As opposed to what I did that I'm complaining about. It's fine to do that. And it's fine to have that as one of the
Prompts.
topics, right, that you talk about.
Hmm.
But anytime you start to confine yourself in this process and
Um,
restrict your consciousness in an exercise that is designed to be expansive and where the form is what you make of it and to follow the inspiration that's inside you already, as opposed to trying to impose a form on top of it. That's my point about this, right?
okay, got it. So if you put yourself in a box, if you're very, very strict about something, then you don't let the creativity or the flow or other things to come from the subconscious to the conscious mind
Right,
because you're just
right.
already because you're blocking it before enters.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
makes sense.
That we have so much structure in our lives anyway, right? We don't need to impose more structure, right? Not everything has to have structure to it. And the flow of consciousness, well, maybe it has a structure that is bigger than we can detect, right? I'm just saying that there is a natural process of thought
Okay,
and of feeling and inspiration. And this is an opportunity to encourage that. And you're not going to encourage it by imposing restrictions on it.
fair. Okay, I can definitely see that. I can definitely see that, and it you could do it that every now and then, but then also just allow yourself to put or just to write anything that comes into your mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can start by saying, okay, tonight I'm going to start by talking about what I did today that was uh, satisfying, right? Uh, and then see where it takes you, right?
Okay.
Don't feel like, there's that thought. Well, I'm gonna I can't talk about that because I'm supposed to be talking about this,
Hmm.
right? Use whatever comes up. Start with a prompt, if you will, and that prompt might be, let's talk about good stuff. That prompt could also be, I'm going to complain today. I'm feeling like I need to complain about this stuff. Or the prompt could be, I have nothing to say. That can be a prompt, right? The prompt is emptiness. I'm feeling empty, uninspired. My mind is blank.
Yeah,
And
I
it's still blank. I'm writing about the fact that it's still blank and nothing's coming up. Why is that? Why is it? Yesterday I had a good day, and yesterday I talked about a lot of stuff, and yesterday I wrote for 15 minutes straight without. All of a sudden now you're into a session, right?
yeah, I did write that a few times. Like, hey, I have no idea what I'm writing. Nothing is coming up. So I did that, but at some point I felt silly, which the book says sometimes it's going to feel pointless. You
Yeah,
keep going, and then
yeah.
I get it. I know I understand,
It's
but
okay to feel silly, right?
yes, it is. It is.
You're
I'm trying.
allowed. You're
I'm trying.
allowed, right?
I'm trying to make peace with
Unlike
that.
unlike everybody else in the world, no one else in the world is silly. It's just you, Daniel. I just thought you should know.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%, one hundred
I've
percent.
never been silly in
Yeah,
my never, right?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's just like the way that we judge ourselves is just incredible. You know
Yeah,
what? One thing I've seen, or it's been my perception in society, or even with myself as well, and I just wanted to see if you have seen this as well, whether in your life or the people that you help,
yeah.
which is very attached to what we just talked about, just writing things. It's like I feel that we're afraid to explore new things because we attach our self-worth to our ability to do things, and I feel like that we would rather wash, rinse, repeat those things that we already know that has brought us a little bit of success, rather
Hmm.
than start something new because we don't know
Yeah,
if it's going to work out at all.
yeah.
And as I mentioned before, we're not happy with uncertainty, and it's easy to stay in a comfort zone
Hmm.
once we're successful, which part of it is called golden handcuffs, perhaps for some people. For other ones, this is where I get my status. This is what I'm good at. I'm afraid to start from zero because we have more to lose. Leaving behind a familiar career can can bring up feelings of loss, even grief.
Absolutely.
How do you help people navigate that emotional transition?
Sure. Well, losing a career, getting fired from a job is right up there with death and divorce. I mean, it statistically or psychologically, it is a devastating loss. And we don't tend to give people enough room to experience that loss. And we don't give ourselves enough room to experience the loss because the panic around, oh my God, I don't have a job anymore. The paycheck is not coming in. I got to get another job. I got to get the resume out there. I'm going to apply to all these jobs. It's understandable, but it is not necessarily the best thing for you because remember that if you're still experiencing the loss and you're getting right back out there and talking to people and going in for interviews, likely the loss and you're going to manifest that loss in every conversation you have, every meeting you have. And remember that if you're going to go right back out on a job interview after you've lost your job, they're going to ask you what happened at your last job. And if you're not prepared to talk about this with detachment, equanimity, positivity, it's not going to go well, right? If you are awkward in the interview talking about this, if it's difficult for you, they're going to know it. You're out. You're not going to be considered. You've got to do some prep work for going back out into the job market. And part of that is reconciling the loss that you have experienced. So you want to find people who are willing to talk to you about this, people who understand, people who are close to you, people who are not. Many people will be afraid of you. You'll be kind of radioactive because you've lost your job. And this is also a common reaction where some of your best friends, you find out once you're no longer working, they don't necessarily want to be around you as much. They are uncomfortable about this because maybe they're concerned about their own jobs. And you're losing your job is a reflection to them of their own insecurity. So this is another vulnerable piece of the career transition process where you may feel like, oh my God, my friends have abandoned me. They're supposed to be here to help me. And I'm not playing the victim, but I do need some help here and I really would appreciate it. And I'd like to get some advice and some support and maybe someone can, come over and we can, watch TV together or go to a game or something like that. And people may be hesitant because either they're insecure or they're afraid for you or they're overly attached to what's going on with you. And it brings up all this stuff for them. So just know that that is very much what goes on in a lot of cases around people losing jobs. Again, it's an opportunity to self-reflect, right? You want to be able to kind of go, okay, maybe you were part of a mass layoff. It wasn't about you and 500 other people got laid off. But you're always going to think, why was it me? Why did I get laid off and that guy down the hall who has been here for a shorter period of time than me, he didn't get laid off? What happened? What's up with that? So there are all sorts of things that go through our heads. And you need to be able to go through this grieving process, right? And come out the other side feeling like, okay, I lost the job. It was what it was. Now I have an opportunity to do something different, to do something better, to apply the work that I did in that job, the lessons that I learned in that job. I'm going to apply that going forward in a new way. So I have something to say and to share that's positive about my experience. And when you're coming into a job interview feeling positive about yourself and not defensive about yourself, but really genuinely positive and engaged with that person that you're going to be meeting with, about the opportunity that is in front of you and how you would deal with it, that's a far different picture and a much more positive picture than if you're kind of going in defensive and thinking, oh, I don't want them to ask me about my last job. I don't want them to ask me about this. I don't want them. You're going to ruin it, right? Just because your attitude is negative.
John, when I was listening to you now, a thought popped in my mind that I feel that a lot of people are not victims of circumstances, but victims of perception, right? Is how the meaning that we give to a loss of a job, or as you said, even a divorce or love or loss of a loved one, even for the job. And this is something that I've been trying to apply more into my life, trying to create resilience by changing a perception that life is happening for me, that this is a sign. Even if we go back to the story about the priest, this is a sign that any kind of rejection is redirection. This is guiding me to something better or new, or even whether it happens in your relationship after a divorce or just breakup, or a job. That means that your time there was done and you're meant to do something else, maybe something new,
Yeah.
maybe something better.
Yeah.
And just having enough emotional regulation and to some extent emotional intelligence to understand, wait, I can control the way that I feel about a particular event in my life. I can
Yeah.
control how I perceive it. And if I understand that, hey, what if I see it again? Everything has a positive and negative, point of view. We are the ones who can decide which one we
Yeah.
can focus on.
Yeah.
And listening to you, and yeah, as you said, because the moment when you were telling me, well, I was one of the 500 people, why me and why not others? Well, maybe you are meant to do something better, greater,
Mhm.
right? And if you choose to believe that, and if you choose to see it that way, you're going to be happy, I'm glad and grateful that that company let you go.
Yes,
But you
exactly.
have to sort of embody and embrace it, which is,
Yeah.
by the way, hard. It is definitely hard.
Well, but it's possible, right? And the way I like to, the expression I use around this is that your attitude about the issue is the issue. And if you have a growth mindset, positive attitude, then any issue that you have, any potential conflict, is an opportunity to reframe it. What's the lesson here? What's the opportunity here? Uh, Maybe the lesson is that, you know, this is a toxic person or a toxic place. I need to get the hell out, right? It's not about me. Or maybe it is about me. Well, what is it about me? Life is information, right? If you start to kind of look at everything in the feedback as information, you can either act on it or reject it or file it away for future reference. But it's not about judgment. You don't have to judge yourself for the feedback. The feedback is an opportunity to make changes or not. So that's a very different way of living your life than to use your external experience as an opportunity to beat yourself up because you're already feeling shameful, fearful, angry, insecure on the inside. That's what you have to deal with, not what's going on the outside, right? You have to start from the inner, clean up that mess inside yourself, get that straightened out. Because another piece of wisdom on this that I've learned is that outer experience is a reflection of inner reality. If everything's kind of going smooth on the inside, you're aligned, you know what you're about, you feel strong, positive about the value that you're bringing to the table, it's going to start reflecting on the outside. If you're feeling angry, insecure, envious, shameful in any way on the inside, well, the outside is going to tend to mirror that back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I heard that long time ago that we don't experience reality, we experience our brain's version of it. And if we don't have an internal, like a line, as you said, and being at peace, then what we are going to be exposed to based on how our brain works is going to be a reflection, as you said, of our internal state. And I guess that's part of the human experience. That's what everyone has to go
Yeah,
through and understand and keep moving forward. But
these
one
are
thing,
the lessons.
bingo. And I
Yeah,
feel that every setback, every adversity, every obstacle has a lesson, and it's our job to learn the lesson. If we don't, then we're going to experience something similar down the road again until we finally learn the lesson.
yeah,
Some of us are more stubborn than others, and then we
right.
have to go over and over until we find,
Well,
okay, I get it.
like the priest, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
it is. It is. And yeah, I wonder if outside the reframing, which is huge, is one of the most powerful tools I've applied into my life. What are some actionable steps that someone can take if they feel stuck but don't know where to begin in their career reinvention?
right. The journal is one important step. The other exercise that I give people at the beginning of my career coaching work with them is the four ikigai questions. So ikigai is this Japanese concept of life's purpose, and it's been translated into the West as this Venn diagram, which you can find on the internet, with these four questions: What do I love to do? What do I do well? What does my world need? I've kind of adapted it. The Venn diagram says, what does the world need? I think that's a little bit too lofty. It's like, what does your world need? What does your business need, your industry, if this is about job? And the fourth question is, what can you get paid for? So at the intersection of those four questions for me is the start of this process. And if you start making lists of answers to those four questions and start thinking about it, share it with your close friends and colleagues. Start having a dialogue around this. Start figuring out what is that constellation of value that you bring to work with you. Because I mean, again, another question that I ask clients on the first meeting is, when did you have the most fun in your career? What's been the most fun for you? What job, what incident, what aspect of the work that you've done has been the most fun? Because that really is what we want to strive for. We want to strive for having fun, because having fun means you're doing your best work, you're enjoying yourself, other people are enjoying working with you, you're most creative, you're most productive. Why not strive for that? Why not find a way to get back to that?
Yeah. Well, it's just like nothing in life is if guaranteed. I mean, so if there's no guarantees about anything, you might as well just do something that you love rather than something that you hate, and just might as well just as a
Well, we're
that,
not always going to get the opportunity to do that, right?
true,
But I'm
but
saying,
you can
if
avoid.
you want to start figuring out how to direct yourself towards something that's going to be more fulfilling, right? And you may have to endure some injury and injustice along the way, but the idea is that you have a plan. Your plan is to get to the point where you're doing more of what you love, more of what you do well, more of what your world needs, and more of what you can get paid for. It's not just like, again, either or. It's not just my life is miserable. The next step is my life is going to be fantastic if I just do this. It's a process.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. At the end of the day, even if we do something that we love, we will have to do things that we don't like to do, and that's part of the
Right.
journey. It's just part of it. Now, would you rather do 80% or 70% of things that you enjoyed and 30 that you don't, or flip the numbers and do 70% of things that you don't enjoy and only 20 and 30? It's like, well,
Right.
if you ask me, I'll rather do the 70 that I enjoy, and
Sure.
I will have to find ways. John, it's been incredible conversation with you, and I could go for another hour or so because it's just fascinating topic. But as a closing question, what have you learned about yourself through your own career reinventions?
Ask the question again. What have I learned about
What?
myself?
Yeah. What have you learned about yourself through your own career reinventions?
It's a really good question. Um, I think I've learned to trust myself. That is the overall gift of having to change jobs a lot, of having to learn the resilience and the tools and the techniques to do that. And as time has gone on, I guess one of the questions that people ask me often is, does it get any easier to when you're fired a lot? Is it the second time is it any easier than the first? And my answer typically is no. It's never easy to get fired from a job. It's always a loss. It's always painful. There's always a sense of separation. But over time, you can learn how to deal with it. And you can get to the point where you know what your plan is, you know what your value is, and you have the tools to be able to figure it out. And that, I think, is the most important aspect of it.
I love that. I love that. Things don't get easier, you get better at it. And I think that you gain a lot of self trust by following that intuition, by just trusting that even though you don't have all the answers, you will figure it out. And when you realize that you'll figure it out, then everything comes into, everything falls in place. And then you can start to, hey, you know what? I can take more risk because now I trust my ability to figure it out down the
Yeah,
road.
exactly.
John, wonderful time. I wish I could,
Thanks, Daniel.
talk for longer, but where can people find you, work with you, anything?
Sure. So the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I'm the only John Tarnoff on LinkedIn. So there's my little spelling my name there. So just search for
Sure.
me on LinkedIn and you'll
On
find me,
LinkedIn.
connect with me. And if you want to learn more about the career coaching process that I do, it's there. You can also find more information on my website, johntarnoff.com. And there you go.
Awesome. Yes. Those links are going to be in the video, YouTube description, and show notes. And once again, John, it was a completely pleasure. And thank you for sharing your wisdom. It was like a very, very insightful conversation.
Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it.